Okay, so this session is being recorded. Thank you for joining us for our EnergizED workshop session today. Today we are learning about the power of diversity, and we're really glad to have you with us. We're also really excited to welcome Lana Graybeal, our speaker today. Lana is with us here at the City of Boise, and I'll let her do a little introduction of herself. But as you go through this session, please just keep yourself on mute until we get to a point where Lana might stop to ask for questions, or if you have a question. You can also feel free to use the chat, and I will keep an eye on that and then make sure that your question gets brought up when there's time. So thank you for joining us, and Lana, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to be here with all of you and talk about this really important topic. I wanted to start with some introductions, so I'll kick that off and then I'll pass it over to everybody else here. As Melinda mentioned, I am with the City of Boise. I've been here for about 4.5 years. Currently, I am the Senior Communications Manager for our strategic initiatives. And what that means is I help oversee communications around everything from housing affordability to transportation to how we equitably engage our community members. And I also serve as the city's refugee community liaison. And so I would love to start by just doing a quick introduction. If you could share your name, the neighborhood that you live in, if you feel comfortable sharing that information, and briefly why you're here today. So I am just going to go down the line here. I can see some of you, so I will call on you and we can go from there. So Darcy, did you want to kick us off?
Hi, I'm Darcy James from Central Bench Neighborhood Association. I'm not active in association activities, but I am an active neighbor, and I'm concerned about how the diversity that we have is not fully appreciated by the people who think they are the only ones.
Thank you, Darcy. David, did you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dave Pena, and I am a director for the Vista Neighborhood Association up on the bench.
Great, David. Thank you for joining. And did you want to share why you're here today?
Excuse me, I'm at the gym, so I apologize.
That's okay.
I just think diversity is really important, and I see that Boise is getting more diverse, and I would like to be involved in that.
Great, thanks so much, David. And then Deborah, I see you next on my screen if you wanted to go next.
I am from the Central Rim Neighborhood Association, and I thought the topic is important, so I joined today.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Betty? Or maybe I'm saying that wrong. Is it Bet or Betty? Hovey?
She's muted, no? She's muted.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Betty Hovey.
Hi, Betty.
Hi, I'm from the Liberty Park Neighborhood Association. And we have many refugees that live in our community that we tried to involve in our neighborhood association.
Great, thank you so much for joining. And then I see Victoria next.
Hey everybody, I'm on the Central Bench and I just joined because I'm a neighbor interested in the topic. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining, Victoria. Gary, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Gary Dufault. I'm with Centennial Neighborhood Association. We've been up and running for just a couple of years. And the reason I'm most interested in this is I'd like to talk about diversity in the sense of gentrification of our neighborhoods due to the housing price rise and family unit living.
Great, thanks so much, Gary. Jack?
I'm Jack Cook. I'm with the West Valley Neighborhood Association, and all kinds of diversity, is really important to me, and I'm just interested in the subject big time. Thanks for putting this on for us.
Thank you for joining. Then Gigi?
Hi, I'm on the central bench and I just appreciate the topic and having the discussion and echo a lot of what was already said about it. Looking forward.
Thanks so much, Gigi. And then we also have Nikki Drake, who I think some of you might have met, but Nikki, did you want to introduce yourself as well?
Thanks. I'm Nikki Drake. I'm the other half of the Energize Our Neighborhoods team.
Great, thanks, Nikki. I think we got to everyone. Let me just double check here, make sure. I know we had a few people join midway through. Okay, I think we're good. So I am going to share my screen real quick. I have a presentation and you let me know if you can see it. Is that showing up for everyone?
Yes, looks good.
Great, thank you. Okay, so thank you for joining. I'll get us moving because there are some practical tips and some conversations I want us to have. And again, this is a very engaging discussion. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to either raise your hand or as Melinda mentioned, make a note in the chat and I'll make sure to get to it. So we went through this part. So before we get started, just to kind of frame our conversation, if you can take a few minutes just to write down some ways your neighborhood association currently works to engage neighbors, that would be great. And then we'll just do our round robin and that'll help us lead into some practical tips on how we can do more. So I will give everyone about a minute and then we can get moving. Okay, is there anyone that wants to kick us off?
I can go. The central bench, we've done NNO, the National Night Out events in the past and the Easter egg hunts. And then the quarterly meetings. And we do some, I guess the mailers are not engagement, it's just announcements, but primarily I think it's those three things.
Great, thanks, Gigi. Anyone else want to share how their neighborhood currently engages diverse community members?
I'll share for Liberty Park neighborhood.
Thank you, Betty.
We have a global garden that is in our neighborhood. So we've been collaborating with them on our May 1st Arbor Day event that's coming up, which has been a good way to meet folks. The other thing that we do is we try to bring in some renters to the board, to our board of directors, because many lower income people are renting, or the younger community are renting. And so that's one way we can bring in those people.
Great, thank you.
One more thing I'd add is Central Bench has a library that I think does really well with communicating with the neighbors and having activities.
Yeah, they do.
So do you work directly with the library, or is it events and neighborhood activities that they're putting on that you're a part of, that the neighborhood association is a part of?
They support the neighborhood association with just helping on marketing the events that they have, but I'm not a part of directly with the library. I just see, like, when I walk by and when I use the library, how active they are.
Great, thank you.
I'm Gary Dufault from Centennial Neighborhood Association, and we're only about 1.5 years old. So we've been emailed, try to gather attention from our members, website announcements, and we had hoped to have events to really kick off our neighborhood association, but because of COVID in the last year and stuff, we have been unable to get anything going. We're hoping things open up by the fall.
That's a really good point you bring up, Gary. Much of our conversation today will center on how we engage diverse community members, with the caveat that COVID has made that a little bit more challenging. So that's a good perspective to have in mind as we talk through these recommendations.
I have something also. We got an information board for our neighborhood, and we encourage everybody to post whatever they want, if they have a garage sale or dog walk and whatever, on this information board. We also encourage the churches to if they have any events, because I think that also brings the community together. And what, for example, to reach out to the low-income families. For example, I laminated a poster explaining where they can get help during COVID. And I thought this is also something that shows everybody that we are welcoming. You know, if somebody is going through difficult times, we are there for them. We want to help them. Yeah.
That's great. Deborah, the information board, is it a digital one or an actual physical board?
I try to post a variety of things on Nextdoor and on Facebook from our neighborhood association. But I constantly hear back from people that people are going away from Facebook, and also the elderly people might not like it. Some elderly people don't like it. So that's why we had the idea of a real thing, like an information board that is in a very exposed area, that people can go for a little walk and pass by and see what is hanging there, and everybody can hang up something. And we have somebody from the neighborhood association that goes regularly there, and she checks what is on it, because you have to check a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that.
This is Dave from the Vista Neighborhood Association. We have a Facebook page, and then we also hold our meetings at the Whitney Community Center. So we use that for itself, and we have 2 elementary schools in our area. So a lot of students go to the Whitney Community Center, and so we try to encourage them to let their parents know about our neighborhood association meetings.
That's great.
This is Jack Cook from West Valley. We have You Stick in Bloom that we've had a couple of years at Redwood Park. That's turned out to be a pretty awesome thing. A lot of different neighborhoods are going to that. We also have a Facebook page, and we have our own West Valley Neighborhood Association page that's really good. And we use Nextdoor a lot.
Great. So there's definitely some themes next door, partnering with other community organizations like community centers, churches. That's really great. Thank you. Is there one more that we want to share, or should we just want to make sure we get to hear from everyone who wants to share? Oh, go ahead, Darcy. I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add for Central Bench that one of the good things that they do that Gigi didn't mention is for those of us who don't use the social media, there's a way to sign up to get in your email a direct message from the association. And as was said, some of us elders really appreciate that.
That's great. Yeah, having a variety of ways to engage with community members, because not everyone also has access to a computer or a smartphone. And it's a barrier that, there are different ways to definitely address it. So that's a great point. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. So here are some ways, and I'll share these and we can have a discussion of these also, but tactical and practical ways to encourage diversity in thought and engagement from community members. So one simple way is to put it on the agenda. So set aside a part of your meeting or an entire meeting dedicated to discussing how your neighborhood association can reach engagement goals. And we'll share this PowerPoint after this meeting, so don't feel like you have to take notes on everything. I'm happy to send this over, but really looking at who's at the table and who's missing, who finds it easy to participate. And this gets back to some of what we were discussing. Not everyone has access to social media. Is that a challenge? What are some ways to break down those barriers? Can we do, are folks more open to mailers, or having something left at their door is another great way to engage residents. What is the association's motivation, and how much effort are you willing to put into this? What are the top priorities? And then what are 2 to 3 realistic actions you can work on now? And this essentially could be the agenda to use to really start mapping out the who and where and how you would start engaging community members. A couple of other ideas, and these are some that we've also, from the city perspective, have been exploring to engage residents who don't typically engage with local government, and they're very transferable to neighborhood meetings as well. Offering childcare is a great way for family members with young kids, single parents who have no other option, and maybe that's the reason they're not able to attend, is they have young children at home. Offer translation services for folks who may need it at meetings. We've been working with ASL interpreters and others as well for languages that folks need. Before I move on, are there any questions on this specific?
I have a question. So do you have example how a neighborhood association do that practically? Offer childcare, for example, who does the childcare, and also the translation services? Is there something available from the city, or how does it look practically?
Sure. So we've been, the couple of times that we've offered childcare, and again, this was pre-COVID when we really started looking into this for in-person events. The YMCA is a great resource. They have certified childcare providers, and also Boise State University. They have students in their secondary education programs that are certified, that are CPR certified, that can help offer childcare. Translation services, we have a list of, and I need to double check if it's public on the city website, but there's a list of interpreters and translators, and language line services can also set someone up with an interpreter or translator. We've been, oh, go ahead.
And who pays for it? Yeah, is it from the mini grant that we would pay that?
That's probably a question for Melinda. I'm not sure about the nuances of the mini grant. I know that sometimes BSU does offer services pro bono, so that would be a great question for them.
Right now, Deborah, yes, that is an eligible expense for many grant funds.
Thank you.
I have a question on the child care. I think that's a great feature to offer. I was wondering, would the association should be concerned about liability with offering that service?
If it's a certified childcare provider, I don't believe so. So a few more recommendations here. Share information about the neighborhood association through flyers. Again, having them translated into various languages if needed. And then also some easy ways is to meet on different days and different times to accommodate school schedules and work schedules, and look at varying meeting locations, which some of you are already doing, and meeting at community centers, parks, libraries, etc. And then provide various ways for people to share their thoughts. I think this is a really important one that we've definitely experienced here at the city is not everyone feels comfortable sharing their opinion, especially if they're joining for the first time. So providing them an opportunity to share their feedback in smaller group peer discussions, written comments on note cards. One thing we've done that's been really successful is we purchased on Amazon, and I think they were like $20, small whiteboards that come with pens, and then having group discussions that way where people write their feedback on a whiteboard and share it. And that also works really well for COVID times as we've started doing more in-person events, keeping people spaced out. It's hard to hear sometimes, so having people write out and then share out their feedback has been really helpful. So I'll pause here also and see if anyone has any thoughts on these recommendations. Great. I wanted to share this example from Canada, and sorry, on the last slide, I missed the focus on shared values rather than a singular issue. And there's a really great example from Edmonton, Canada, where they were looking to focus on organizing to build and manage hockey and other facilities. And so their shift was going, and they weren't getting a lot of buy-in because not everybody really cared as much about the hockey facilities. And so they trained, the city offered the training to neighborhood associations on how to have conversations with neighbors and created this program called Abundant Communities Initiative. And it's their city's efforts to strengthen the social fabric of our neighborhoods and gather folks around shared values versus a single topic or concern. And they've had really great success in building those bridges and relationships with community members. So there's more information online about the Abundant Communities Initiative for those of you who want to take a look. So knowing that diverse voices make for a richer community, who would you like to have in your room at the next neighborhood meeting? And what are some ways from kind of the things we've talked about you would look to engage community members? So we'll give you another minute, maybe if you want to take some time to write down some notes, and we'll open it up for a group discussion. Is there anyone that wants to kick us off? And I can't see all of you on my screen, so feel free just to speak up.
I have a question. Do we know I've worked with Dr. Vincent Katuku, and I'm not sure, are you aware who he is?
I'm not.
Okay, Dr. Vincent Katuku he has a column in the paper. I think a regular column. He was also the motivational official motivator for the Boise football team years ago. He is from Nigeria. He has an interesting story in that he's lived there among the communities in Nigeria. For years, he's come here, got his PhD, and is living in Boise. You might want to look him up. He's a wonderful speaker, and I believe donates his time and speaking abilities to many worthy causes. And I think he would be an excellent one to speak to people here, coming from basically being a native running around in Africa before he even had shoes to being a speaker. So if somebody wanted to look that up, or I might get some information for you, I think he might be a great person to be on a panel or to organize a discussion.
That's
Gary,
great.
Gary, excuse me, this is Betty Hovey. Gary, what was that name? Dr. Vincent, what?
Katuku is spelled Kutuku. And I believe that's the spelling. And he's a
Yeah,
wonderful-
excuse me, Gary, it's Ki,
Oh, it's K.
Ki.
I'm sorry, Ki. Right.
Oh, you had the rest of it right.
So are you aware of the doctor?
Yeah, yeah, he's has a school that he's supporting in Kenya, and I think it's maybe a 501c3.
Yes, he's got Helping Hearts and Hands is a charity that he runs here and runs a school
That's it.
in Kenya. And but as far as talking about community and knowing community and how people work together and live together, he would be, I think, a wonderful asset.
Would you, Gary or Darcy, mind putting his name in the chat so other folks have access?
Sure. I will do that. I will do a little, I'll try to pull up a link as well.
Great, thank you.
Also from the chat, Lana, Dave shared that they have usually a bigger turnout for their meetings when they have guest speakers, specifically when they've had the mayor or the new chief of police come and attend their meetings. Just saying, I think he's noting here that he recognizes they can't come to all of their meetings, but it definitely helps to encourage new people to show up when they have guest speakers that attend.
Great, yep, that's really helpful. Thank you, David.
One thing that I realized when we organized the forum is that accessibility is for people with disabilities is not given. It's absolutely not given. And so perhaps we should include that conversation too. How accessible is actually our meeting room? I think it is not. It's absolutely not. And also sign language, yeah, that's something that we might need keeping in the head. Another thing that in our neighborhood, our neighborhood association, perhaps a more emphasis, because half of the people in our neighborhood rents the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's the almanac. You can read that, how many people rent it. And so we don't have enough representation from this. So I think that's definitely something where we can improve.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Deborah. And when we were talking about varying locations, that's definitely a consideration, is taking a look and making sure that it's easy for people to get to who may, have accessibility issues, who don't have a car or a reliable form of transportation to be able to travel to the location, and making it easier and a more welcoming place for people to join definitely breaks down some of those barriers.
Lana, another question from the chat. The question is, I'm curious about what the city of Boise's definition of diversity is.
That's a great question. So our definition is diversity in all different aspects. So we're talking about age, we're talking about race, we're talking about gender, and we are also talking about geographic diversity. Those are the things we take into consideration in making sure that when we are in accessibility as well, when we are planning events, we're looking at are we breaking down language barriers? Are we ensuring that folks with different abilities have access, which if any of you have joined any of our virtual events, you'll notice that there's always an American Sign Language interpreter joining the calls as well. And we do offer Spanish translation or any other translation by request from community members, and have had that option. We're looking into a language access program right now to formalize that, hopefully in the next couple of months, to be able to offer those services for folks who need them.
Is in the almanac also written what the languages representations are in the different neighborhoods? What groups of languages are present?
Yep, and we have that information as well. As a city government, we have to follow federal guidelines, and the threshold is 5%. Once a population reaches 5% of a language being their first language, then that's what kind of triggers us to be able to say, okay, we have to start translating and offering interpretation services for this. Of course, we do more than what's required, which is why we offer services by request. If somebody, we know that Swahili is a commonly spoken language, but it doesn't meet that 5% threshold just yet, we still make sure that we have partnerships with interpreters and translators to be able to offer those services to folks who need them. And you'll see that especially in our front counter. We know that a lot of our childcare providers are from, come from different countries in Africa. And so we have a partnership in place with Language Line Services and also some interpreters who are on call to help us provide those services. Great. Are there any other questions in the chat? I'm sorry, I can't see the chat.
No other questions as of right now. I can let you know if somebody else put something in there. Gary did share that link, so if anybody was interested, I shared that back out with everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Gary. Okay, let's keep moving. So some other tips to consider in doing this is more of like shifting the context within which people gather. And again, that goes back to the Canada example that we shared. How can we start gathering to celebrate one another and to build relationships and advocate and defend, rather than advocate and defend or provide answers, and start building those authentic relationships. Another great thing, and I believe one of you mentioned that a neighborhood association is already doing this, is start breaking down those silos and participating in other community events, neighborhood gatherings, and to build that stronger fabric of relationships. Another way is to identify how your association can be of assistance to others. I think, Deborah, you mentioned partnering with the churches and building those relationships and seeing where are community members going for resources and how can you plug in to the relationships that already exist to be of assistance and to build that trust between community members and their neighborhood associations. And then mobilize your neighborhood association to work on community projects that are identified to be important by diverse voices, such as people of color, youth, and renters. I'll pause here to see if there's any discussion we want to have around these tips. Great. So this is something I read and I wanted to share with everyone on this call, is the small group is a unit of transformation. And we know that large scale transformation occurs when small enough group shifts in harmony towards a larger change. And the small group produces power when diversity of thinking and dissent are given space, commitments are made without barter, and the gifts of each person in our community are acknowledged and valued. So here's some questions you could use to guide your next meeting. How valuable an experience or project or community do you plan for this to be? How much risk are you willing to take? How participative do you want to be? And to what extent are you invested in the well-being of the whole community? And this is from a book called Community, The Structure of Belonging by Pete Block that I read earlier this year that talks about how to convene diverse groups together for the greater good, and I would highly recommend it. It has some really good practical information as well. And I think that's what I've got. So happy to open it up for further discussion. Looks like we have about 20 minutes left.
Are you going to post these slides that you had here?
Yeah, I believe we'll share them out. We can do it after this call.
They'll be posted on the website where you registered for this workshop. We'll put the recording of the workshop and the slides up there.
Okay. Are we kind of open to any question or comment about general diversity in the communities at this point?
Sorry, Gary, you're breaking up a little bit for me. I missed that first part. Are we open to questions about what?
Yeah, can I briefly define a diversity issue I think is growing here, and I'm not sure of where or how it'll be addressed?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I live in what I would call a starter home neighborhood. And it's a nice starter home neighborhood. I mean, it's right off McMillan and Eagle, so there's a lot of access to, restaurants and services. Across the street from me, a home was just sold for almost $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
Across the street from it, there's a home that's occupied by 3 families, 8 cars. And so I'm not disparaging that, but what I'm saying is our neighborhoods are turning to rentals, and I'm not disparaging that either. But the fact is, if you can't afford $2,000 in rent for a 1,400 square foot house, what do? You have 3 or 4 families move in, and you're all there, and you've got your 5 cars. And so we've got the one woman that's going to be living across the street who bought probably for cash because she couldn't buy the 700,000 foot Eagle anymore, the $700,000 Eagle. And so how we're getting a kind of a renter owner gentrification or gerification, whatever the word is. And how do we, I don't know how we deal with that, because that's going to it's going to change the culture of our neighborhoods for the better or for the worse. But I think as the house prices stay up, that's going to happen. And I don't know if anybody else recognizes that as a possible issue. And I'm not suggesting we say, well, so many people can't live in that house, or, I don't know what the answer is, but more pressure is going to come to bear on that. Where we were, I was in the HOA for this. I was on the board for the HOA a couple of years ago. And at that time, we were about 25% renters. Now I think we're almost 30 or 40%. Any other comments on that?
I have a comment, Darcy here. In addition to that, I think the intake to the neighborhood is a problem that we're having. We cannot control who comes in and buys that house across the street from you. And so this person may not be looking at the neighborhood, may not be interested in the neighborhood, may be only thinking about the house itself. if she doesn't have kids in school, she doesn't even care about the school. And that is a burden for a neighborhood to carry, to keep people connected when the majority of the people who are physically present are less interested in connecting than those who were there before them.
Exactly. And I don't know, I think had this particular person who bought the house across the street had bought and come to visit on the day, there was motorcycles going up and down, 8 cars in front of the place across the street, and loud music. And again, what we're talking about is we're changing the culture of many neighborhoods in a patchwork fashion that's going to create some kind of stress and pressure. I like my neighbors. I like my neighbors with 3 families in there. They're nice folks. But, you know, that's going to be a problem, and already is, I think.
Well, I just can describe my neighborhood, Central Rim. When the almanac came out, we were very surprised to realize that half of the people that live in our neighborhood are renters, because the neighborhood is so nice. It's really a nice neighborhood. So if people come in and they rent, I understand that is a little bit different. If you say there's one house and 3 families are squeezed into this house, that is a difficult situation. I would understand that. But principally, I wouldn't say that renters are careless of where they live. Many renters take good care. I see that in my neighborhood. And the other thing is, I see often when people move to our neighborhood that they are right away, hey, can I join your neighborhood association? So people moving in doesn't mean that they don't care for the neighborhood. Many people that move to a neighborhood, they move there because they like the existing neighborhood and they would like to maintain it. I mean, that's just what I experience in my neighborhood. I cannot talk for other neighborhoods.
I'm going to suggest something. I don't think the problem is renters or buyers. I think the problem is the cost of housing.
Oh, certainly.
Across the board.
That's part of what's
But
driving.
that's where we need to solve the problem, is at the source, rather than talk about trying to control the results of the source, I think.
And the home across the street from us went up for sale, and there was a bidding war on it. I learned from the owner, and the final bid was about $500,000. And that final bid, now we're talking about 1,600 square feet here at Eagle and McMillan. And that $500,000 bid, the one was a investor from California. The bid under that was $490,000 from an older woman who loved the house. The owners, bless their hearts, said, we're going to sell it to the older woman because we just think she loved it so much. And because I know what will happen when the investor from California, he'll immediately rent it and at maybe $2,400 a month. And there we go. But it's harder to find sellers who take that into consideration.
Yes, and it is true. My son saved up money with his wife for several years, and they wanted to buy something in Boise because they love Boise, and they couldn't. They just couldn't. Also, younger friends of ours, they moved to Caldwell, Nampa. So it is a pity. It is a pity, and yeah. Because of the bidding wars, they tried several houses, and there were always people that could pay cash, and they had no chance.
So now we are lapsing into sharing our problems, which Planet doesn't want us to do. We need to look for our possibilities. And maybe the possibility is that Gary should take a big cake or something to the woman who's moved in across the street and be sure that she gets to feel like she really belongs. I remember I also am a single older woman, and I moved into the neighborhood, and I felt a little guilty about taking up a whole house. So the neighborhood outreach to those gentrifying people maybe would be a kind of diversity that we haven't thought about, but we need that too.
My wife makes zucchini bread loaves, and she has brought a loaf of warm zucchini bread to every new neighbor we've had in the last 4 years. And when I saw this house up for sale, I said, make sure we still got some zucchini left in the freezer because you're going to make another loaf.
That's great. Thank you for mentioning that, Darcy. I mean, I think there are two truths that exist here. We do have a housing affordability problem in our city, and we can talk about that. That's a whole different, it does tie into this, but it's a topic that we definitely need more than 10 minutes to discuss through. And I would encourage those of you who are interested, we will be doing some significant outreach with community members about housing affordability and looking for partnership with the community on how to solve some of these things, because we know that folks who want to call Boise home, as you mentioned, Tucker, your son, young professionals, folks that are maybe looking to downsize after their kids have left, or looking for something other than either an apartment or a single family home, we need to make sure we have the suite of options for residents to be able to join our community and to afford it, to be able to afford it. So that those will be happening. Gosh, I would say, I mean, I'll also share that housing is the biggest priority for the city of Boise right now, because we know that we're in a very, very critical moment in time. And the COVID-19 crisis has really shown a light on the gaps in housing that we have. And so I'd welcome all of you, however you get information from the city, whether it's through our newsletter, participating in the neighborhood association, or our website. Happy to share ways to engage on that, and we'll be sharing more information on how to have the conversation about what housing looks like in our city right now is how we'll be starting, and then where we go from that as we identify. We're working with some organizations right now to identify and clearly define what the gaps and kind of those crevices are, and how we move forward in working our way out of them. The other thing I would say is, looking through, I don't know, we went through a lot of things, but some really practical ways to be able to engage community members, or especially new neighbors that are moving in, and having that I would really recommend having a dedicated neighborhood association meeting to really look through and talk through who's at the table right now and who are we missing. And once you map that out, because the neighborhoods are different, there's some that are renter, like you said, there are more renters than you expected. There are some that have a lot of different non-native English speakers. And once you identify those, it's easier to map out how and where you can engage community members. And we'll share this presentation to see if that would be helpful to start guiding some of that discussion. Is there anything else anyone wanted to bring up while we have a group together? Okay, well, thank you all for joining. I hope this was helpful. I am happy to share any more information or connect with you in any different way. Just let me know. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.